You're tuned into The Collective Voice, thought-provoking interviews co-hosted by young adults, fostering deep faith through courageous questions. Welcome to the conversation. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to The Collective Voice. I'm Reverend Phil Dieke, the Director of Congregational Innovation at Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary, and glad to be back for another episode. And today I'm joined by Becca Pessoa. Oh, I already messed it up. Pessoa. I already messed it up. See, I was even like trying. Me and names, I've just been having a hard time with names lately, but I met you through the Wild Church Network Leadership Group. We had Rachel on the podcast not too long ago. So I think I told the introduction there too of like, there were two young people in this whole leadership group that we had. And I just reached out to both of you because I just loved that you were a part of it. And you both had such great things to say in the breakout groups that we were a part of. When I got to hear from you specifically. I also just learned before we started recording that your name comes from Portuguese. So I love that too. That's a fun piece that I did not catch whenever we were in the leadership thing together. So anyway, so glad that you were joining us. Thanks for taking time today to be on the podcast. Would love for you just to introduce yourself to the listeners, let them know where you're coming from, where you're joining from, and a little bit about your role and what has brought you to the space.
Thank you, Phil. It's such an honor to be here and to be on a podcast and to be sharing some of my story. So we'll start at, where the story began. As Phil said, my name is Becca Pessoa, and I'm from Fresno, California. That's where I'm currently coming to you from. And I was born in Brazil, but I grew up here in Fresno in the Central Valley. And what has brought me to this space? I think it's just, to Wild Church. That's, kind of a grander question. Why am I here? I'm honored to be here because it means that, like you said, my story, my words in that space interested you thought would be interesting enough to share with others. And I feel like I'm at that place in my journey right now where I'm becoming the storyteller. I'm sharing my story. And so it's beautiful. This is like my first podcast interview. So I'm very excited.
Nice. I love that.
And I am also coming into as well a spiritual leadership role. And so that's something that I'm stepping into. But I've always felt since I was a little child, like I've always felt connected to spirit, and I've always felt like I'm a leader. So those are just very natural gifts and talents that I've been blessed with. And I've always been a servant too. My name, in fact, in Hebrew, Rebeca, means servant of God. And I've always felt like I've been a servant. I love to serve others. I love to serve people and humanity and animals and earth. And that's all together what brought me to Wild Church is this desire to serve earth, this desire to serve community and to build a community and to be a spiritual leader and to connect with my roots, connect with, I have both Mennonite Brethren roots and Brazilian roots. And so just kind of, I never felt like I fit in with the church and stuff. They're very different, but I've always been embraced. My authenticity has always been something that my parents actually really encouraged in me. And so I felt like, I grew away from the church that I grew up in because I grew to create my own spiritual connection to God. And, that took me to nature. That took me to different cultures, traveling around the world. And that brought me to where I am today, helping to lead Wild Church. I'm an administrator for the Wild Church Fresno, and I'm also on the Wild Church Council. And I'm also building my own spiritual community called Sovereign Spirits. And I'm also sharing, my offerings there to build a spiritual community where we connect to our sovereign spirit. That's why it's named that, like trusting our own intuition, trusting our own connection to the divine, to nature. And so, that's a lot about me.
Okay, so let me recap. So you grew up Mennonite Brethren, right?
Yes.
Like that was
Yeah.
the faith community you grew up in as a kind of kid and stuff. And
Yep.
then so I know your Wild Church is connected to a local congregation, right? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, it is.
And what church is that it's connected with?
So it is connected to Willow Mennonite um, Church. So that's another Mennonite community. Um, yeah, it's called Willow Ave or Willow Mennonite, I believe. And we are blessed to be connected to that church because it really allows us to exist in a logistical sense, you know. But we also have connections with them. They do amazing things. I love all the events that they do. They do a lot of ecology, involved in the watershed here in the San Joaquin, and that's a lot about what we're about. And so, um, yeah, we love them and yeah, want to
I
do
love
more
that.
with them. Yeah.
Oh, so many questions already. I would love to know, I would love to know, let's stay with the Mennonite for a second, because I
Yeah.
do feel like a church that's willing to sponsor this work, right? And be a part of this ongoing work and really support you in the birthing of new work out of it too, says something about what that congregation, and I would love to know like how that also applies to just the denomination kind of as a whole. Like, is that something that you feel is kind of within the ethos of the Mennonite church as a whole?
Mm, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, to backtrack to my growing up, like on my mom's side, my grandparents were missionaries in Brazil, with the Mennonite Brethren Church. And so my grandfather was in the seminary and taught in the seminary in São Paulo. And that's why, you know, I have my family, this move, these immigrants to Brazil. Um, and I say that because I think that they very much like brought up my mom's family in this Mennonite culture. And she did that too. And then, you know, mixing, my dad is from Brazil, my dad's Brazilian, and we kind of created our own family culture. But Mennonite Brethren to me was this piece of social justice, like this piece of caring for community, this piece of caring for your neighbor. Brazilian culture is very much like that too, very much caring for your neighbor and the community. But I would say that for me, growing up in the Mennonite church, it felt like people cared about some of the things that I cared about too. Like there was always like some people that I resonated with, like, you know, we cared about Earth, like we cared about each other, you know, diversity. I feel like there was still some things that I felt like didn't sit well with me, like, but there was always like a desire to, you know, like I think of the MCC relief, like that's a big part of my upbringing, like having the MCC relief aid, the MCC relief fund fair that we do every year, and that like continued my Mennonite culture in me, like just through the traditions, the food, the, you know, all those things, the quilting, like all that, but also this desire to share abundance across the world, this desire to, you know, go travel, not just to spread God's love, but to do that as well as to help people with their physical needs, like that they have, like food and water and a safe place to live, right? And so
A good
that
both and, right? Not just one or the other,
yeah,
but a both and. Yeah, yeah. That's good.
exactly. Yeah, that definitely inspired that servant in me, you know, this desire to help others around the world. And I feel like, yeah, that's been my lifestyle. Like I've always lived my life that way. So it's still a part of me every single day.
Mm, that's beautiful. I love that. You mentioned the watershed. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about what role the watershed plays in the Wild Church you're doing. And I have to tell you, so ever since we did this leadership network, and you know, we often brought up the idea of watershed in this work that we've been doing. And so now anytime I go to a new city, it's like my goal to go like run by the watershed there and just go and learn and figure out and observe and just listen, right, to the watershed of that place and kind of get back to the source of what provides water for that whole city. Like I was in DC recently, right? And I went to the Potomac and I just read, and
Mm.
it was the best thing too. There was this big, beautiful yellow tree and it was just so lovely. Anyway, so I would love to hear why the connection to the watershed.
Yeah. Well, Wild Church Fresno started out, meeting by the San Joaquin River during COVID, during the 2020 pandemic, I should say. And that essentially was, that is our sanctuary here in Fresno. Our watershed is the San Joaquin River. And it runs through the city. Like you can, this is a place that's a 10-minute drive from my house, a 10-minute drive, and you're literally in a parking lot with, so many other things, restaurants, everything, just your regular civilization. And then boom, you just go down the hill and there's the river. And, there's ponding basins and all that as well. As this was some farmland. Um, but right there on the river, the San Joaquin River, it's, to me, I think of oak trees, I think of blue herons, I think of um, owls. I saw, I don't know if it was a great horned owl because it was dark, but I saw an owl the other day. We were walking on the river for Wild Church, and it was just so beautiful. It was like sunset. And I was like, this is so special that this is our backyard. Like, this is our home. We have this river, we have all this wildlife. And like you said, water, the source of life. The source of life is rushing through. And I've always felt connected to earth and water medicines. Like that's always been my vibe. I've always been playing in the dirt, playing in the, river. And that's where I felt the most alive. That's where I felt the most whole. That's where I felt the most connected to the divine. And so it makes sense that Wild Church is like sprouting up at the rivers, at the watershed, just makes sense. And
I love that. Yeah.
we are happy to be like, our sanctuary is that river, and we feel responsible and we're grateful that we can be a part of, keeping that river clean. And right now there's even, a lot of things happening that our action is needed to, fight from people doing mining and stripping of the river, right, for the resources that ends up having these really detrimental effects on the wildlife and the nature there, right? The plants and the animals and us, because we are an animal in that ecosystem. So
such an important reminder. Yeah.
Yeah, we are, there's that aspect of that justice there where it's so important for us that it's like we are taking care, we are stewards of this watershed as well. That's part of our role and responsibility as people that are habitating that space. Yeah.
I feel like environmental justice is something that I don't want to see it gets overlooked. I know a lot of people are investing in it, but it's such an intersectional source of justice because again, tainted water affects everybody, Like
It does.
if you have polluted water, and there's so many examples we could turn to, right? Where it's water, but it's not just the water, right? Then there's the environmental, there's the air, there's the light, there's just so many different options of where this becomes about intersectional justice for an entire community of people. But we just don't often pay attention to that one because there's probably a multitude of reasons, but it's just not always as tangible. I think that's often the problem is we know when people are unhoused because we see them on the streets. We know when people are going hungry because we see the food pantries getting, all the food taken out of them, or we can see, but we don't often get out of we don't go walk by the watershed, right? So that's why I love so much that you're literally taking people to go and put their feet and experience it firsthand. I'm saying all this from the city of Dallas, right? So maybe that's my own problem is that like we're in this concrete jungle, and I feel like that we feel so disconnected from the Trinity River watershed that runs through the south side of the city. And, there's big highways that you drive on it over the Trinity, but that's usually that's it, and there is this huge disconnect. And what happens when all of a sudden now we get reconnected to that source? It ends up transforming, I think, who we are and how we view our entire community and how it impacts our entire community.
Mm-hmm.
Getting me all worked up here. I love it.
Yeah. No, I love that you said that, because I think environmental justice is sometimes that invisible piece that people don't see because they're disconnected to the environment. And because, because we're disconnected to our bodies as well. So sometimes, we don't see that correlation between the environment and our health. But the data sees it, the data sees it, and so it's just, it's so important that we take care of Mother Earth and we take care of ourselves. It's so important. It's the most important thing.
Yeah, I really think everything gets back to it, right? If we don't do that, when we talk about the house being on fire as a metaphor, it's well, it's not really that much of a metaphor anymore. It really feels like our house is on fire, literally.
Yeah.
You're in California, better than, most people, right? So, deep breath, right? So much work to do.
Yes.
And yeah, there's so much work to do. And I feel this is why I love this conversation so much, because there's one thing to tell people about it. There's another thing to allow people to experience, and not just experience the negative side of environmental justice. I think that's one way to do it, but inviting people to have an experience with what Wild Church does brings about the opportunity for transformation and a deep investment, because they do have a reconnection then to the land. So will you just tell us a little bit about what your Wild Church Fresno looks like, and what that operation and kind of how it is each time you meet and how often you meet and stuff like that?
Yeah. So Wild Church Fresno meets the first Sunday of every month, and we switch between a few different locations here in the Fresno area. We have that location that I mentioned that's just right there on Palm and East, just down the street in the city, in the north side of town, by the river, the original location. And so we go there, we go to Lost Lake, we go to Woodward Park, we go to a variety of places. And every time will look a little different, because we kind of plan out the year and there's a theme for the year. And then each month we'll be kind of diving into a theme within the theme. And so I could speak to what this year was like. And this year's theme was rooted in. And then in each month, we picked a different value that we are rooted in as a Wild Church. And so we have sometimes, speakers come. They're usually just people that we know, us on the council. I did a lot of the planning, a lot of my own connections. So we, for example, had Rooted in Frequency for a month, and we learned about sound frequency and sound healing. And I had one of my friends who is a sound healer come, and another friend did a meditation with the sound healing. And it was such a blessing, and people loved it. It was amazing. So we have that. For an example, we have our own members too step up and speak about something. We have congregation members. Wow, I've never said that before. community community members that are psychologists and teach at the seminary, and that have spoken, that are artists and teachers, and all kinds of people. I spoke on decolonization and regenerative land practices in Puerto Rico, after I spent 4 months in Puerto Rico last year. And so I spoke about that, and we did a garden work day. We do garden work days as well with some of our community partners. One of our favorite locations is at this permaculture garden on the west side of Fresno. It's called Yoville. and we like to go and host our gatherings there. It's absolutely amazing. There's a giant, beautiful oak tree and permaculture gardens and farm. And so we give back as well to them and do volunteer days with them. So we also, um, in addition to our gatherings once a month, do outdoor adventures. So usually about quarterly, we'll do a hike. And those will go a little bit further, maybe an hour's drive, maybe a few hours drive. This year we went to the Crystal Cave in Sequoia National Park, and it reopened this summer. We took a trip there and did a hiking in Crystal Cave, and we also did a camping trip with the United Church of Christ. We just joined their camping trip. So, we're trying to have partnerships with these other amazing churches and people that are doing similar, work in this field of honoring nature and honoring God, and it's been fun because we're meeting people this way. We're inviting more people, to join Wild Church this way, and we're expanding the opportunities for our Wild Church members, because there really are tons of opportunities out there. But yeah, at our Wild Church gathering, it looks like we always open with a welcome and a land acknowledgement, and we open with a name circle and a question to reflect on. And then we will pass it over to the speaker or the facilitator, whatever we're going to be doing with them. And then we have a contemplative wandering time. And so after that, we hope to have at least 20 minutes for this time, but it just give or take depending on how the conversation activity goes. We'll let people wander around wherever we are and just have dialogue with nature. Just, maybe have questions to reflect on, or just go chill, just go walk. And then we come back and we'll have a communion. And we give always our first offering of communion back to the land first. And then we close out, and that's it. Usually people like to hang out a little bit, or that's kind of what our Wild Church gatherings look like, in a nutshell.
It sounds so lovely.
Yeah,
Just sounds so nice.
it is.
Where do people learn about this Wild Church, or how have they often found out about it?
So we have, our digital footprint. We have a website. We have our Instagram, and then, which is more of a recent thing that we started doing the Instagram. It's very recent. And then within the community, it's kind of mostly word of mouth. I feel like, people know someone who's in it and they tell someone and they bring somebody. And, we have our newsletter, which has at this point a couple hundred people on it, getting the monthly newsletter. That doesn't mean they come though, of course. And we love that people are on that newsletter, that stay connected even that way, even though they might have moved away, a lot of our core group of people has changed and moved over time, moved in. So, right now, I think we're at a stage where we are asking, how do we share this? How do we get more people? We've done like a little bit of tabling at, like Earth Day event, we'll set up a table. So that's like one little way, but it's mostly just word of mouth, and then getting connected on the newsletter, the Instagram, the WhatsApp group, the Facebook group. We have all of those ways. So some people probably just see it as like a Facebook event, honestly, and hear about us that way.
So when someone, like, you meet someone new and they're like, "Hey, what do you do?" and you have the opportunity to share about Wild Church, what's your go-to share for that? Like, is it a story? Is it a kind of the bigger narrative arc of it? Like, what's the way you introduce Wild Church to somebody who is new and doesn't know anything about it?
That's a great question. I'll usually say, "Hey, so yeah, I'm a part of Wild Church, and it's a really cool community, eco-spiritual community. We recognize God and we recognize Christ, but we also recognize and are open to all paths, all spiritual paths, and all connections to divine and nature. So if that interests you, you should come and join us. We have different events. Every gathering's different. So, I always tell people, like, if one thing isn't really calling to you, just like check it out the next one, because maybe you're like, oh, I don't really want to do sound healing. That's whatever, not my thing. So weird. But we'll have an art workshop. We'll have like a creative, like, we had someone do a creative expressive art therapy. And, so there's always different modalities that we're sharing. At least this has been what we did this year. Moving forward, I don't know if it's going to be the same or a little different. We're still in the figure out how that goes. Yeah, that's a little bit of Wild Church. I kind of derailed right there.
No, I think it's great. I think it's a great. Oh, again, I just wonder. This feels like so corporate, but we often hear about like elevator pitches. Like
Yeah, an
if you
elevator
only have
pitch
a
is good to
couple,
have. No, I need to
right? Like
write that down. I'm glad
if
you
you only
asked me
have a
that.
little bit
I
of
need I
time to
need
like hook
that.
somebody,
Yeah.
and what I love about it is it's not
The
like
story is a
it's
good
not
question.
right. Like it's not like you're not trying to sell something you don't believe in, right? You're selling something that is
Yeah.
deeply meaningful to you.
Yes.
And so it's apparent whenever we get to sit down and have a whole conversation about it, right? But
Yeah.
I'm curious how you portray that in a
Mhm.
quick
Yeah.
opportunity, So,
Yeah.
but I love what you just shared though.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like having a story is a good hook too, Like I would just share, I found a wild church in 2023 when I moved back to Fresno, and I didn't have, other than childhood friends and family, I didn't have a community here. And so my mom invited me because my mom had been a part of it. She invited me to Wild Church, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. Church in the wild. That's so my jam. I was like, what? And then I was just hoping, okay, I hope that they're really down though. I really hope that they're open. Like they're not just like saying they're open, but then actually acting all weird when you like share your authentic truth, which is a little bit wild, like sometimes. And
Like
everyone
wild
was
needs to mean
so,
wild, right?
I
Like I
know
need
exactly. I was like, it's wild church, so we're gonna get wild, right? And they were just so open. Everyone was so loving and just welcoming. And I was like, yeah, this is my people. Like, chill in nature, go on hikes, pray, like sing to the Lord, talk, share your thoughts, and and also be there for each other to support each other, and that's what it's been for me. So yeah.
I know you don't have to speak on behalf of all young adults out there, right? That's not I don't need to pin that on you here, but are you seeing that as like other young adults in your community that this feels like a expression that feels whether more natural to them or um, just something that resonates more deeply with them than maybe like quote the traditional like you talked about the watershed being a sanctuary, right? Like people are you seeing other young adults feel more natural going to be by the watershed as opposed to going to sit in a building sanctuary?
Yes, absolutely. I think all of us humans, like, maybe are just very disconnected from nature, and so even have fear around it or anything like that is possible. But we all have this desire, I think, to, or we kind of feel this freedom when we're in nature, this awe, this like connection. I can't speak for everybody, but I can for myself. And I know that I have that. And I know a lot of people do. They're like, oh, yeah, like going out and hiking is so healing. I'm like, yeah, yeah, like we're meant to be out there. We're meant to be touching nature. We're a part of nature. And so having a deep, intimate relationship with nature, like as I've shared, was a big part of my spiritual journey. And I think a lot of other people are on that path too. Um, and I think, younger children too, it's very obvious too, like kids. When you look at kids, they love to be outside. They don't want to be sitting in the pews. That's why there's children's church. But, because they would probably be rather
Yes,
climbing the
yes.
trees, and why not let them? Like, why not have church outside under grandmother oak tree and, get to do all the fun things outside? And that is spiritual connection. So I think that a lot of younger people are coming to see that. And I think that the older generations are as well, because we're in a way, I can't claim that it's us, but like all of us together as a force, people are showing that, the more people are open about it, like people are coming to see that, oh, wow, that is really healing to be in nature. This is cool. Like, I'm going to do this more now. And, in our community, it is more older people in our wild church, we definitely have a mixed generational. We have some youth, we have, a spectrum, but we don't have too many young people. So where they at? Where they at? Where my homies at? Come out,
We'll get this spread all over Fresno, the whole Fresno area. They're
please.
going to be coming out in droves. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm curious about that too. I really am. I'm wondering where the connection point is for young adults with this Wild Church. And again, like it's somewhat telling that I forget how many people were in that network that we did. What were there, 30 maybe? And
Yeah.
again, there were only two that were young adults, and it could be that just by nature of the meetings, it's hard to meet and it costs. And all,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that could have been
Yeah.
prohibiting
Yeah.
for a lot of young adults. But I do wonder that, because often when I talk to young people, they do care about environmental justice and they do like to be outside and they love to go hiking. So
Hmm.
I'm always curious as to where or how that intersection or that integration comes about. So I'm joining
Yeah.
you in that. Where are your people at? Where are the people at? Yeah.
Yeah. And I also hear a lot of, sometimes not a lot, some of the responses I hear too when I share about Wild Church with my friends is that it's still, and this is Wild Church Fresno, because all the different iterations of Wild Church are all different. They're not all rooted in a church. We're still rooted in the Mennonite Brethren Church. And so, some people just don't have that desire to have that connection with Christ, or to have their community be connected or like rooted in Christ. And for me, that's been like, I've had to relearn a lot coming into Wild Church for me with that, because I have my like, I'm not a Christian anymore phase. And so, and I don't consider myself to be a Christian either, but I now see Christ in a different way. And so it's like, it is a big piece for some people, like that I think keeps them away from Wild Church, I will say, is that I wonder if we didn't have Christ, and it was just a spiritual community open to all, and we are, but we still have that rooted in Christ. I wonder if we didn't, if we would have more young
Well, even
people.
just Wild Church, right? Is the fact that church is in it, that something
Yes,
that
church.
and I know Victoria Lewis talks about that in the book, and I think in some of the meetings we
Mhm.
had too. It was just that a lot of the different there's been a struggle with a lot of the ones that have popped up of, do we include the word church in it? And some have very much stayed rooted and tethered to it, and some have said no, because there's baggage associated with it, right? So there's
Yeah.
a leaving that word behind. You said you don't consider yourself a Christian, but you have a different perspective on Christ. I would love to, if you're willing to
Yeah.
share what that means to you.
Yeah. Um, I, you know, don't consider myself a Christian because the religion as a whole for me um doesn't sit well with me. After learning about it from a like decolonial perspective, and I just even like high school was the end of my going to church days. Once I went off to college, I was like, no, I'm not doing church no more. I would go to gospel choir. I went to gospel choir. Like I always was connected to spirit, but the church for me was like this institutionalized form of like weaponizing God. And that's what it was for me. And that's, something that I was like, no, like I can't get on board with this. So yeah, I just, I was like, yeah, I'm no longer a Christian. What's my religion? I don't have a religion. I figured, well, if the Christian religion is kind of using this, everyone needs to think this way, or this way of like kind of controlling the masses kind of thing, then are other religions doing that too, you know? And there was never really like another religion that like called out to me that I was like, I need to explore. I like to read and, you know, learn about all of them just because I like to be a well-read person. And, but to me, again, it was always nature. Like nature was my God. Nature was my spirit, my connection to source. And so for me, that led me towards more of a, like shamanistic healing path, right? Shamanism meaning, you know, and there's a lot of different indigenous like connections to spirit, and that's what shamanism is giving understanding relationships to plants, animals, all of nature as not only something like that exists on the 3D, but that also exists in the spiritual realm. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense to me. That feels like, you know, and so plant medicine started becoming a part of my healing path. And these experiences with different plants and animals too, plant and animal medicines, connected me like so strongly to the divine and in such powerful ways, and also so many other ways, healing my body and my mind and my spirit, you know, and learning how it's so holistic. Everything, we are holistic beings, right? We are in the 3D, but we are also spirits. It's both, it's duality, right? Like, so yeah, basically my whole spiritual journey just, you know, I don't even know how to title it, but I guess sovereign spirit is the title I can give because that's the title I've given to my community and, you know, my offerings, you know, if you will, is sovereign spirits, because that's what I feel like it's led me to, is trusting my own divine intuition. And that is, it is based off of my whole life, all my experiences, which include everything we've talked about, right? It includes the Mennonite Brethren Church. It includes my relationship to Jesus Christ. It includes my relationship to these different plant and animal medicines, and includes all of it, right? You know, the elements, everything. And so, and me. And it's so I feel like for me, that personal relationship to Christ now, to get back to how it's changed and what it shifted into now, you know, I see Jesus as this amazing disciple of God's love, much like myself. I see myself as a disciple of God's love, you know. I see us as having very similar paths and missions. Jesus was someone that shared to the world that God is within you, that God is not separate from you, God is within you. And, you know, he was a healer. He was a spiritual healer. He was a, you know, and he was a plant healer too. Or he worked with plant healers too, you know. He worked with plant healers, he worked with women, he worked with um, other spiritual healers to share God's love. So for
Yeah, there's a
me, yeah,
good.
my mission is God's love. My mission is just love. It's pure love. And so I feel connected to Jesus like that, where we're on the same mission, you know, we're on that same path. Um, and so he's one of my inspirations, you know. He's not the only one, but he's definitely one of them. And I reframed like, yeah, it's not that Christianity is the only way. Like, no, but Jesus is definitely one of my teachers. So that's how I see.
Yeah, I think you encompassed it well in this idea that Jesus acknowledges both the value of the body, right? I mean, what else is the idea of incarnation if not the value of body, right? And yet also the acknowledgement of the more than just the body piece too. There's a both and in the way that Jesus' ministry takes shape throughout the Gospels, and I think you see the very human element in the Gospel of Mark, and I think you see the very like spiritual element in the Gospel of John, and Luke and Matthew kind of give you a little bit of both, you know. So I appreciate you making and kind of naming those or that aspect of it. You're the second person in a row now. JD on our last episode talked about plant medicine as well. So I feel like at some point wanted to do a deeper dive on plant medicine and that connection to
I'm
spirituality,
here for it.
and what that is meaning for not only, like, I know it's not just the next generation. I think I was telling this last interview we did too with JD that my New Testament professor was a part of the study at Johns Hopkins, and so like I know that it's something that's emerging amongst those who are both in the scientific community as well as the like academic community, and just as well as just practitioners, right? And so much of what I love about the Wild Church Network is it's a orthopraxy before orthodoxy. Like we practice our way into community as opposed to believing our way into community.
Mm,
And I just really appreciate, like that's what I heard that you're sharing as well, was there's this sense of community being established by the shared values that we live out, not just what we profess to believe. And I think that's really beautiful. That's really beautiful. I would love to know, Sovereign Spirit, what inspired that name? You kind of flirted with it a little bit, but if you want to share
yeah.
more.
Um, yeah, I think that what I want to share with the world is my story of how I became connected to my sovereign spirit and what that looks like for me. And, inspire and hopefully, guide others to connecting with their own sovereign spirit. And for me, that's just the most important thing. It's like, you gotta have yourself. You gotta know that you got you. If you don't got you, then, who does? And God does. But in order to be a channel with God, I feel like there has to be that alignment, right? And we're always like on a fluctuating wavy journey, so it's not like we're always in alignment or out of it, right? But um everything, relationships, all of that, I'm striving towards integrity and I'm striving towards alignment so that I can have that clear channel to my intuition, to my divine self. And that to me is my spirituality, you know? And I felt like Sovereign Spirits just encapsulates it. Um, and there's been other parts of my healing journey as well that I share with, basically natural healing, right? Basically, my own journey of like having health issues, right? Or just different things, cysts, learning about what that was caused by, learning about root problems, learning about toxins, right? And that created that sovereignty in myself. That created this need to understand exactly what I'm putting into my body and how it's impacting me, right? And so it created that need for me to make my own products, make my own deodorant, make my own toothpaste, make my own this and that, everything, because I know what I'm putting into my body, right? Into my vessel. And I can trust that it'll be good for me. And then that led me to a much closer relationship with these plants because it's like, I'm growing these plants and then I'm putting them into a salve to heal my, skin. How beautiful is that? Like gaining that relationship, it empowers me, but yeah. So I think there's the sovereign side of things that's very important, being authentic, true to yourself. You know what's best for you. You're your own medicine. Like, no one else knows better than you do. Um, and, the spirit side, because we also exist within that spiritual realm. And um, we need that community as well from each other. We don't exist individually, we exist as a community. And that's a big part of my offering too, is to create community spaces, create healing circles, retreats, gatherings, where people can come together, learn skills, um, practice them experientially, experiential education, and then, take away these relationships with them that they can carry forward. Yes.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And just for sharing in general. I know that some of these are some very personal questions, so I appreciate
I love it.
your
I'm an
authenticity
open
and willingness to
book.
share it. Yeah, that's beautiful. So as we kind of wrap here, is there anything that you just wish that more people in like the church world or more young adults kind of knew about the work you're doing, or just your connection with Wild Church, or connection with spirit and nature? Any kind of like final thoughts you'd want to share?
I think my final thoughts would be, if you feel a call, to follow it. If you feel a nudge, go towards it, and let the, let the intuition inside of you just bubble up by following those things. Sometimes we're led to, like, oh, I don't know why, but I think I need to go to this thing or whatever it is. Go to it. I think that the more we take action on those nudges, the more they're going to come. And then you're going to start going down this path. It's going to unfold. Maybe something new into your life, right? Or something you've been desiring. You're like, I know about this stuff, but I don't really practice it. I know about these things, but I don't do it. Yeah, just go out and do it. Something that for me took the longest time was just giving myself that permission to do things. And it's like, I don't know who I was waiting for permission from to connect to God and the divine, but you don't need anybody's permission, but just your own pure intentions, right? And that's important too, of course, is like having good intentions, being in integrity with everything that you're working with. So like definitely everything respectfully, like just follow those nudges and I give you give yourself permission to just be the weird little fairy alien spirit animal that you are, just be yourself, shine your light, and I think that's going to attracts those other people that resonate with that. And then that leads you to your community. So that would be the last thing I want to say. And I'm saying it all to myself as well. I'm not,
Sure.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not even sharing this with others like, oh, I know. I'm for myself too. Say this.
I was reading a book this morning, and it mentioned one of my favorite quotes from, I think Irenaeus was a 2nd century church father, and he said that the glory of God is a human being fully alive. And it's just been one of my like favorite quotes that I've clung to for a long time now. I just think it's such a beautiful quote, and I think that it's a summation of what you just said, right? Like that's what, trust that intuition and trust yourself, and live fully alive. And what better way to honor God, right? It's good.
Yes. Amen.
If people want to find the work you're doing, so you said Wild Church Fresno, you have website and Instagram.
Yes.
The Sovereign Spirit, does it have a digital footprint as well?
A little tiny one, yep. A little baby
Okay.
one. She's popping up.
Cool.
So for Wild Church, it's just Wild Church Fresno on Instagram, or also wildchurchfresno.com for the website. And then if you typed it in on Facebook too, Wild Church Fresno, it's a page as well on there. And then for Sovereign Spirits, I have an Instagram, and it's sovereign.spirits.xo. And that's the only digital footprint for that so far. So yeah, but I can give my email too, or like other from like personal contact too for myself. So you can email me at RebecaPessoa 12, the number 12 at gmail.com. And yeah, my personal Instagram is Miss.Becca P, BECAP. Ms. Becca P. There's a lot. Wow.
Say your Instagram one more time.
Mine is Ms. So MS. Becca BECAP.
I will link to those in show notes so people can find you and the work you're doing. And if they're ever in Fresno, they can come join. Wild Church Fresno.
Come on by. That would be awesome. If you're in Fresno,
I feel like that's a big piece of this too.
Valley.
Yeah, totally. Like just connecting people across the world, right? The country, the world, like just connecting people across the network who have similar shared beliefs and shared practices and want to go deeper in these things. So, dear listener, I do hope that you'll reach out to Becca and if you have more questions or want to know more about the work she's doing. But yeah, truly, thank you so much for your time and for the work that you are doing and for the way that you are showing up in the world and really fighting to reconnect people to their own divine nature. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Blessings to you.
I appreciate this opportunity. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Collective Voice, the premier podcast of the 787 Collective. For more information, visit us at 787collective.org or find us on social media. And if you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to subscribe, rate us, and share a review. For when you do, you are tricking the algorithm for the common good.